Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Speak the Language podcast. So I really think you're going to like today's podcast episode. A few weeks ago, we put one out called The Good Old Days with Jimmy, where we kind of got Jimmy to give his story of how Primos got started, growing it into what it is now. Everyone seemed to love that episode, and we've gotten lots of requests to kind of keep that theme going, and so that's what we did. We brought in Brad Farris on here to tell his story of how he got started with Primos, how he got started hunting, some of those old fun stories that you don't ever get to hear. I think it was a great episode. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I think you will too. And lastly, I really hope you're enjoying this podcast. We enjoy building it. We enjoy putting it together. And your support and feedback really does mean the world to us. It's what we build this podcast around. So if you have a topic you want us to cover, if you have a question you want us to answer, please go to Facebook, go to Instagram, send it in. We will cover it. And if you want to do us a big, big favor, head on over to our page on iTunes, give us a rating, and write us a review. It really does help. Enjoy the show. Check it for me real quick.
Check it.
Bradley.
Lakey.
So, I like this episode. We hadn't even started it yet, and I already like it.
I don't know. It might be kind of.
So the head up you have is, so we did this same kind of topic with Jimmy, but I didn't tell him what we were talking about because I didn't want him to have any chance to I wanted fresh thoughts. I wanted him riffing off the cuff. And so we did that whole Jordan was there. We did a whole episode with Jimmy about, I wanted his side of the story of how Primos got started, or some of his younger background, and he talked about them working in a garage and putting mouth calls together and all of that stuff. And I thought that episode would do well. I mean, I expected it to do well, but people loved that, because it's an interesting story.
Right.
Jimmy's a fun guy to listen to, and so we've had some other requests.
And in my young career, I'm getting asked all the time, how did you get started? How did you get started?
Yeah.
And just listening to everybody I've talked to in this business, nobody's got the same story.
No, yeah. It's almost comical. Like there's no follow the yellow brick road path to get, it just kind of happens one way or the other. But Brad, you've been involved with, it's the first Primos video I ever watched, you were on it. And then you've been there from, I won't tell your story for you, but that's what we wanted you to talk about
Since 1990.
I wasn't even alive.
That was the year I was born.
Yeah, that was, I filmed Will shoot an 8-point. We were on the Mississippi River hunting at a place, and I remember we were hunting pecans of all things.
Yeah,
that was my first Primos video and experience, and it was in October of 1990. But you talk about how you get in this. I can remember as a young kid, like 10 years old, I just loved hunting. Back then it wasn't no TV or computers or YouTube or none of that stuff. It was it was outdoor life and field and stream. That was it.
Like the magazines.
Yeah, oh yeah. If you wanted to get a hunting fix, you had to look at a magazine.
Yeah.
Of course, and I spent hours looking at magazines. Couldn't wait to get new ones. You go to the newsstand. When's the last time you went to a newsstand or grocery store and bought a hunting magazine? You probably never done that.
I did. I can tell you, there was a Piggly Wiggly in Brandon, and I was walking out with my mama. I was little, and I saw it was a turkey hunt magazine, and I just had to have it. This is the last time I can remember doing that.
I bet I've got 45 copies of Mississippi Game and Fish from when I was a kid.
Isn't that funny? But getting back to so say when I was 10, 12 years old, I can remember we would go on a family vacation every year to Destin, Florida, and I can remember laying on the beach and watching those jets, practice, do maneuvers and fighting. And there was two things I always told my mom and dad. I said, I want to either fly those fighter jets for a living or hunt for a living. And of course, hunt for a living. My dad, he hunted, but my uncle was kind of my mentor when it come to hunting. My uncle hunted like we hunt, today. Loved it. And he would always take the time to pick me up and take me to deer camp. And I grew up hunting in Jasper County, Mississippi.
Yeah.
We talk about pine trees. I grew up at a place where if you saw a spike, you shot it. And then if you killed a buck and it was a 6-point or an 8-point or a 9-point, we didn't talk about score. it didn't matter if it scored. It was a 8-point that was 17 inches away.
We talked about that with Hunter
Oh,
a few
yeah.
weeks ago.
Man.
That's the way my grandpa talked about it. It was a 12-inch 8-point.
And it was pine tree hunting. I mean, it was literally pine rows. We talk about pine rows, and we had little hardwood bottoms. And look, I remember that place. I can remember things about that place. It was called King's Flat Hunting Club, and it's still in existence today. And I can remember so vivid certain things about that place, where my stand was. Oh, this is funny. So I was 11 years old, and I had a Jennings. It was called a Sidekick 2 compound. And I remember how, had my stand, and the week before season, I went and took a 10-pound bag of Morton white salt, put on my salt lick. It might not even been legal to do that. I don't know. I think it was. I mean, it was a salt lick. It was legal. You just couldn't bait then. And but anyway, that next Saturday morning, opening day of bow season, I remember 11 years old now, going to that stand. It was dark.
Yeah.
I was scared to death something was going to get me. Boy, I can remember almost running to my stand, and then I had 2x4s nailed to the side of a tree, and then built a little wooden platform. Mm-hmm. It probably wasn't but 9 feet off the ground, and I remember it starting to get daylight. My nerves calmed down. I realized I didn't get eaten, and I can see that white salt sitting there, and it's the first thing I could see because it was bright, and all of a sudden it was gone, and I'm looking like. Man, blinked my eyes, and then I saw it again, and it seemed like this probably happened over 2 or 3 minutes, and I realized it was 2 deer. And so this deer came walking right by me to my right, and I remember getting that bow and shooting, like, dang, I missed. And because my arrow was on the ground, but then I noticed my arrow wasn't stuck in the ground, it was laying sideways. Well, back then, in those days, we hunted with pods.
Right.
Or nectine.
Yeah.
It was legal. And what happened is I just hit the deer high in the back, and it got that nectine in it, and the poison, they call it poison, not really poison, but it got daylight, and I looked out there and I see a white belly. Like, man.
Got him.
No, I said, I still wasn't sure that was my deer. I said, dang, there's a dead deer out there. Anyway, I got down. It was a spike. I'll never forget it. It's still in velvet. And that was just, I can remember that, that was almost 40 years ago. And I can remember everything I just explained like it was yesterday, but kind of fast forward. That's just a fun little story. I ain't even thought about that in years, and just kind of got excited thinking about it again.
Well, it's funny because we were talking about that last week when we had, or a couple weeks ago when we had Hunter on. We talking about first deer story, because that's always a fun one to tell. We were saying it's like no matter what the timeline is, that first deer, first turkey, whatever it is, it's like you can paint that picture like you're there.
Yep.
You just don't forget that kind of stuff.
You don't, and it was so special to this day. And that a reason I tell that story, because after that I was just, when it came to hunting, that's all I thought about. And I really, as I got a little older, going through school, I kept telling my, I'm gonna hunt for a living. I'm gonna hunt for a living. She would never discourage it, but she was like, oh yeah, whatever.
Why don't you be a doctor or something?
Well, when I got out of high school, there was an archery shop called Indian Archery Outfitters, and they had just opened, and I got something in the mail because I guess they sent whoever had a hunting license. I was 17 at that time, and so I'm gonna check this new bow shop out. So I went up there and I ended up buying a bow from them. Worked all summer and saved my money, and I got to know the guys, and they offered me a job to come work there, and I'm thinking, man. And so by that time I was out of high school, so that was my first job in the hunting industry, was Fletch and Harris.
Yeah. And
that was in August of 1987.
How fired up were you when you got that job?
Oh, I'd have paid them to work there. I can remember this. This is funny. They started my salary. They started, we'll pay you $11,000 a year. I mean, I'm right out of high school. I don't know if that's enough money or not. It didn't matter. I'd have worked there for free.
Yeah.
But the first week I got a raise, $12,000 a year. I was so excited.
You in the money.
But anyway, that's kind of how this all started, and I got to doing archery stuff and working on bows, and kind of fast forward a little bit so Will Primos, he lived in Madison, Mississippi, and this was in Ridgeland, which is kind of just all the same thing basically. But anyway, he would come in there. And Primo's guys were shooting golden eagles back in those days. And Will had to have 2 bows, and they had to be identical. Like, they had to be tuned the same. The sights had to look the same in case something happened. Because he wanted them identical.
Ain't much changed.
No,
it doesn't surprise me at all.
But bows were way simpler back in the late '80s than they are now, and he would come in there, and I had gotten pretty good at working on bows then, because I would never take shortcuts, and I would spend whatever time it took to get it right, and he appreciated that. And finally, I said, Will, can we do this after church on Sunday? Because we were closed on Sunday. I said, because, man, it takes me 4 or 5 hours to work with you, and there'll be people lined up out the front door waiting to get stuff worked on.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of, because I wanted to be able to focus on him, and it took a whole afternoon. But that's how me and him got to know each other. And he said,
right.
I said, man, if you ever have a job opening, I'd like to talk to you about working at Primos Hunting Calls. And so I don't remember the exact time, but he said, yeah, why don't you come visit with me? So I went to his shop, and we sat down, and he wanted to hire me as a shop foreman.
Yeah.
To work, and I thought that was, I said, well, yeah, well, I kind of like my archery hunting, my archery store, working there, and I just really don't want to do that. I'd rather work in your TV and video department. And so he said, well, maybe one day we can work that out. So during that time, he invited me to come film a few times here and there, and at Willow Point North, Cottonwood, and that's when I filmed him in 1990.
Right.
Shoot that first deer we talked about earlier. Well, then I went on to Terra, so worked at Terra Wildlife for 4 seasons, I believe. Guiding bow hunters there. And
how'd that come about? From the archery shop?
From the archery shop. Yep. I used to go. So because I grew up in the pine trees, as we talked about, and my first hunt on the Mississippi River was at Willow Point South when they first got started selling hunts there, and you could buy a day hunt. So we would kind of sell hunts in the archery shop.
Okay.
So I saved up my money, or tried to book hunts for them to go there. So I saved up my money and bought me a one-day hunt. I don't remember what it was, probably $225 or $250 for a day. And I remember it got daylight, and I didn't know deer hunting existed, anything like what I saw that day. And that's where my love for the Mississippi River and the river bottoms started. And so that's how I ended up. I got to know those guys. I'd go over there some and hunted and videoed with Will and the Primos guys, and got to know them. And they had a job opening one day, and I went and talked to them about it, and I took it. Kathy and I, my wife, we moved over there, lived at Eagle Lake, and actually lived on Willow Point South the first year, and lived in a little house they had on a thing. And funny story about that, I remember the house had some rats in it. Big rats.
I bet Miss Kathy loved that.
Oh, I can remember hearing them. You'd hear them running on the rafters in the roof. And she worked at Hines Community College in Jackson at that point, so she would go to work. She worked 3 days a week, and she'd stay with her mom and dad during the week, and then come back to the island on the weekend. And that last time she was there, about the second week, she said, "I'm not coming back until them rats are gone." Look, I didn't have much money to spend on stuff, because we were young and trying to figure out life. But anyway, I went and bought all the rat poison I could afford and some rat shot. And I'd have sat up in that attic with rat shot in my .357, trying to shoot them rats. I never did shoot one, but I did finally get them, and I got them poisoned finally. But she likes to tell that story. But that's true right there.
Just picturing you up in the attic with some rat shot.
I was sitting there on the rafter trying to,
Jesse would have been the same way.
Yep.
That's hilarious.
But that's kind of how that happened. And I remember filming Will. I was working at Terra at that point, and I was guiding at Terra, but I could, they were there doing a writer's hunt and filming a show or videos back then. And I was filming Will. Me and him were sitting in the stand, and we're talking, and he said, I think I'm about ready to I think I'm ready to add another person to the video department if you're still interested. And because this was like in December, and I said, absolutely, I'm interested. Once season's over, because I had to finish out my year at Terra. Once I get through with all my obligations here, I would love to consider it seriously. So I guess it would have been like first week in March, I ended up going to work at Primos in the video department, and that's kind of where that started. And been a fun, long ride ever since. And it was Will and Jimmy and me and Dean Reagan. He was a big part back then. It was just a few of us. I mean, the company was small.
Right. Yeah.
We were in a little strip mall. The offices were downstairs. We had storage upstairs. I don't remember how many people, 18, 20 people worked there then, building mouth calls, and still some of the same processes of mouth call building Will created way back then are still used today.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Jordan, are you tired of hunting in a ground blind and not being able to see what's going on?
No, because I've been hunting in a surround view.
See, how many times have you heard crunching in the leaves? You think it's a big buck, but it turns out to be a squirrel or something.
Possums usually.
Or maybe a chupacabra. Or a wild hog.
Yeah.
Well, with Primos Surround View Blind, you will not have that issue.
No doubt. And you turn around and see squirrels chewing on corn cobs, whatever you want to see behind you.
You can see if your cousin Cletus is sneaking in on your spot.
Let me tell you something else about your surround view that I prefer and why I love to use them.
Let me hear it.
You can take a dog with you. You can take your girlfriend with you. You can take your dad with you that makes a lot of noise.
We're talking about sports utility vehicle type space in this thing.
Yeah, you can sit when it's mist and rain and don't get wet.
I think I even heard of somebody holding a whole family reunion inside of a surround view blind.
No doubt. They're worth their weight in gold.
So I think it would be smart if we told our listeners to head on over to primos.com and order themselves a surround view blind. What do you think?
I got a song just for it.
Let's hear it.
Head on over to primos.com, get your surround view.
Wow, Jordan, you are truly the songbird of this generation.
But that's that's how all that goes. You know, now I still get to work with you guys on the TV show, and my main job now is with Whitetail Properties, selling hunting land. Because throughout the process of Primos, I got to go to so many different farms and ranches throughout the United States and see. And I've always been really a passion of mine was like creating hunting land and working on hunting land and food plots and timber, and I just always paid attention to all that, and I just really enjoy it. Just to be able to still work with you guys and sell land and help people do that, it's been a blessing, no doubt.
I'm sure it's changed a lot since those old days.
You know, it has. And people said, "Aren't you tired of it?" I'm like, man, no, I love it more now than I ever have. Now, I do enjoy. If it came hunting a rut or spending a week on a bulldozer or a tractor, I don't know, it'd be a hard decision. I like them both. They're equal. I mean, I love working on whitetail habitat.
It's something about when you're on a bulldozer or a tractor or something, you're envisioning what's going to happen there 3 months from then. You know, it's like, how's this going to turn out? I love that part too.
Yeah, it's just, I know you do that for people too, Jordan. It's just getting to do that, and it's a long-term process. So it takes 3 to 5 years a lot of times to get everything perfected on a habitat-wise. It's just Mother Nature works at her own pace, and we just got to be patient. But when you do see that come together, and you can go sit and see a food plot that you built in a little sanctuary area or quiet zone that you created that the deer call home now, and you got your food plot strategically placed, and I don't know, that's just a big part of hunting, and it has come a lot of forest deer.
Yeah.
You know, now we shoot bucks when they're 5.5, 6.5, 7.5.
Yeah.
You know, back in the day, back in the Kings Flat, Jasper County days, if it was a buck,
It's a buck.
I mean a spike, we shot it.
That's a buck.
It's a buck. I can't even remember that. Like on a smaller scale, the first time we started doing the takeout here and started doing the food plots here, I remember like the first time I got to sit on that new ground food plot and watch it fill up with deer, I was like, man, we kind of did that, you know?
Yeah.
You know, talking about how technology's come, like with trail cameras. I mean, now there's trail cameras out there that'll send you a picture when a deer walks in front of the camera to your mobile device or your computer. Well, shoot, the first time I ever did anything like that was we actually had, I don't remember who made it, but it was a little timer that had a string, and you stretch it across a deer trail, and when a deer walked down that trail, it would trip that string, and you would know that deer came through here at 7:20 this morning.
It was just a timer.
It was a timer. No, it wasn't even a picture.
That sounds like something I would come up with. If I stretch this string across that trail, he'll trip it. Then a basket falls down and catches him.
Oh, and then we had the range finders. You know, they don't range like with lasers like we have now. You had a little dial in there. When those two images got together, you knew that was somewhere around 25 yards. It might have been 22, it might have been 28, but you were close. So it's just fun to think about those. I hadn't thought about those kind of things in so many years, but it's fun to go back and think how that. I wish we had a little string thing, like a trail timer, that we could go stretch out and look at it.
Tell me this, because this was a real fun question for Jimmy when we were talking about this. Like, tell me your first recollection of when you had to hunt being filmed. When you had to, like, film, when someone was filming you hunt.
Yeah, I can tell you exactly who that was. It was Will Primos. We were at Willow Point North, and we were hunting, and I remember vividly, it was a 6 point. We were hunting by some button willows at the edge of some water, and here comes his 6-point, and he bedded down. And I was being, man, look, I was being filmed. That was a big deal. I was like
nervous, and
Will Primos is even filming me. That's even like, and I remember shooting a Golden Eagle bow, you know, Easton XX75 aluminum arrows, and big old 5-inch
broomsticks.
Yeah, vanes and big old broadheads, and so I'm being filmed, and this deer goes and lays down. And I'm like, man, he's like, I don't know, 60, 70, 80 yards. I don't remember the exact distance, but he lays down, and we watch him, and you know, it's getting kind of late in the morning by then, and I had an idea. I said, Will, what if I shoot an arrow over the top of that deer and hit them trees behind him? Wonder if it'll spook him, he'll run over here. I did that, and it worked. But what didn't work is the second shot, I missed him again.
The second miss wasn't meant to be.
No, the second miss was not meant to be. and I remember that, and it's somewhere on a truth video somewhere. I don't remember. That was a long one. It would be in the first truth 1, 2, 3, or 4. I say that. I know we videoed it, and I can't remember if it's on a video or not, if it made it or not. But that's what I remember. That's also when I heard the that same hunt. I think before that, when I heard my first deer bleat, and bucks chasing grunting.
Yeah,
you know that they were probably roaring, which we didn't know what that was then until we figured that out later on in Illinois and Iowa. But you know, I'll never forget. It was 4 or 5 bucks, and that doe was running. They were chasing her, and she was bleating, and they were grunting, and it was just a cool experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me about had Primos already transitioned into making elk calls when you started, or did that happen when you were there?
No. Will had just got into the elk stuff. He had started making elk calls probably about 2 or 3 years before I started. And Truth 2, the Truth 1 elk video he did. He had started, him and Will Walker and David Carden and those guys. You know, they had already done the first Truth video. I don't know how many years it took them to make it. Now, the Truth 2, I was working for Will when he did the Truth 2 about elk, you know, Truth, on elk. But that was the year Morgan was born, and her birthday is in the middle of September, so I couldn't go on the hunts then because she was being right. I'd have sure enough had bad times at home if I would have missed that.
Yeah. So tell me about because the first elk trip I ever went on with Primos was with you to New Mexico.
Yeah.
And I was, you know, I was looking to you like, well, you got to tell me what's going on. I've never seen this before. So I want to know what it was like for you the first time you stepped foot, you know, in elk country. Like, what was that like?
Yeah, it was in Montana, and it was, I remember it was at the Bar None Ranch, and I was filming Will, and it just, to wake up and go out there, and I'd only seen what I saw on video, you know, and to hear the elk and to see them and smell them, it was just like it was a different world. Like it was kind of like my first experience on the Mississippi River. But getting to do that, and I love calling. I've always enjoyed turkey hunting, and there's some similarities between elk and turkey hunting, but they're not the same other than you're talking to each other.
Right.
Just got to have a whole different mindset. But it's just something about calling and having that elk respond to you, and they're so big and majestic and loud and noisy. Man, and I'm hooked. I mean, I think this was my 22nd year in a row to elk hunt, archery hunt.
Yeah.
So, and I hope to never miss a year. Even if I don't care if I even have a bow. If I'm with you two guys, and long as I can just go see it and make a few calls and get one to answer, that's all I want to do.
Something about being out there with you.
Yep.
That's I wanted to hear that because I can, you know, I can know from my personal experience, you know, you go from, I was kind of, very similar. I grew up hunting pine rows, you know, and the biggest game you've ever seen is a deer. And then all of a sudden you step out in those mountains and you have these elk coming in. And you're like, that thing's as tall as I am. You know, It's just such a, like, whoa.
I mean, you're looking at a 600 to 700 pound animal, and you're used to shooting anywhere from 180 to 240 pound whitetail. That's a big difference.
Yeah. And how early on was it that hunt, that older hunt they always see of you where the elk stood there facing you for the longest time?
You hear your heart beating in the microphone.
Yep, that was in Colorado. And this is how, and Will and I hunted a lot together, and this is something that I'll never forget. I didn't have a call in my mouth because I remember we're walking up there, and we called, and that bull was just right there. So it was like just a mad setup. And he was literally within seconds. Probably was a minute, but that was in the 2000s. I mean, early mid 2000s, I think. And I'm at full draw, and that elk is facing me. And we never shoot elk or whitetail or anything facing us. We just don't do it. It's a low percentage shot, and it's just not something we agree with, or even talk about or do. And so I knew I wasn't going to shoot. I mean, I don't care if that bull, he could have ran off and I'd have never shot him. I mean, he's at 10 yards facing me perfectly. Yeah. And I'm at full draw with my pen right on his throat, and I'm not going to shoot. And so I was getting shaky, and I remember picking my foot up because I said, something's got to happen because I can't hold this bow much longer. You know, that bow were 50% let off or whatever back then. It ain't like that bow's they might use now.
Yeah.
And so I moved my foot, and I remember he stopped and he looked, and I moved it again, and he bolted. Well, you know, I knew what Will was going to do because it's just what we do. So Will stopped to call. I mean, he called, meow. And when that bull stopped, and I just put that pin right there behind that shoulder and just ding, and let it go. And he was, you could hear my heartbeat. And he was, 10 yards just bugling, I had hair back then. He was parting my hair, you know. That's how loud he was.
Yeah. I mean, well, anyone's heart would be beating like that with all that going on.
But you know what? The first elk hunt that you and I did together, that's still one of my most memorable hunts too, when that bull, you know, he just came walking. It was just one of the meant to be things. And he walked 10 yards right over my shoulder, and you're right there behind. You're one of your first elk to ever video.
Yeah.
And that was a cool experience. We tricked him. That was a good one.
I just remember, again, there's so many, pieces and parts to elk hunting and how y'all do it that I was just, at the time, it was like I was trying to drink water out of a fire hydrant. You know, I was just trying to soak it all in. And one of the things that I've picked up over the years is, and you've said it 100 times, when an elk's coming in, the first thing you do is try to get your bow back. You know, if his head goes behind something. And so I'm filming the elk, and at this point, I can see the way he's coming. I can picture what I think's about to happen with, you know, him walking right past us like that. And the elk goes behind a bush, and you draw your bow back. And I start freaking out. I'm like, no, I can't see him. I can't. And I remember you're like, and then you're like, I was just getting drawn. So then I was like, sorry about that. Because you can,
And I had run camera enough over the years too, which I'm thinking not only hunting because I got the bow, but I'm conscious of you and where the camera is, and I feel like I know what you can see and can't see. And I remember thinking, I'm not going to shoot. Just let him. Well, I waited till he got by where. Yeah. I don't remember if you told me to shoot or not shoot, but it was pretty easy. I knew where he had to be for you to get it on video, and it was one of them meant to be deals. Keith Beam was calling. He was a new elk caller at that point, and you and I are looking at the bull, and Keith, I'm telling him, remember, I would
You're giving him signals.
I'd hold a mouth call up, and that meant do a cow call, and I'd hold a bugle up. And he would do a bugle, and because you and I were looking at the elk, and he's 100 yards behind us.
Yeah, he was sticking his head up over that little lip, and he'd look at it, and Brad would hold his hyper lip up. And then Brad would he'd go like that, and he'd mean bugle, and he'd bugle.
Well, we were watching you were watching the elk, so we knew what he was. Yeah, he was giving us enough interest that we knew what to do and say at what time, and it worked out. That bull came walking, hit it right up to Keith, and we shot him at 10 yards.
It was fun. Golly, that was fun.
It was fun. And then and of course the whitetail, when it's all said and done, at the end of the day, if I had to give up everything and just hunt one thing, it would just be the whitetail game. The game of
the whole strategy.
Yeah, because it's a year-long thing now. You know, you got your habitat management. That is the key biggest thing you can do for a whitetail property if you got control of the land and can manipulate the habitat. But you said something earlier, Jordan, and if people are listening, you got people like when we got out of school wanting to get in this industry and get in this business. You know, for me, I've been one of those guys, just like I talked about Fletch and Harris. Yeah. I didn't care. I'd have worked there for free. And I was the type of guy that I can remember working all night, Fletch and Harris. Like, watching hunting videos and Fletch and Harris like till daylight the next day. Yeah. Because it didn't matter about money to me. But when I committed to do something, I was going to do it. And a lot of people have attitude. Well, if you want me to do that, you pay me to do that. I never had that attitude. Right. I was like, I'm gonna work so much, they're going to have to pay me or they're going to lose me.
Right.
You know, I don't mean that cocky. I mean that as in I didn't worry about what I got paid.
Yeah.
If I told somebody I was going to dig a ditch or I was going to cut firewood, I was going to have the biggest, prettiest ditch and the most firewood you ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think, and I'm not saying if you just do that in life, do that no matter what you do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if I was a waiter or if I was a cook or I didn't care. Whatever I was going to do, I was doing it to the best of my ability. Mm-hmm. And you will be successful.
Yep.
There's so much opportunity in this world if people just apply themselves.
Yeah.
You know, and I hope people coming up will do that. I love seeing somebody work hard.
Yeah.
You know, if you see somebody and they're walking fast and, you know, they're focused on their job, they can go anywhere.
Yeah. And that's why I tell you, it's there. Like you said, there's so much opportunity out there these days. There really is.
Yeah.
And you just can't. I tell people all the time.
But based off what Brad's saying, there's no rhyme or reason how to get into this business. If you just work hard at it and got a mind to do it, you can make it somehow or another.
Yeah.
You know?
I says, don't get discouraged and just you got to work hard like that. There's no.
When I first started trying to figure out how to do something in the outdoor industry, I got a job at Giles Island.
Mm-hmm.
I moved down there a month early without pay just to learn the place and work on the place, and it worked out, you know.
And you stood out, you know, out of all the people there. You obviously worked hard, and you put the opportunity before the dollar.
Mm-hmm.
The first outdoor related job I got was guiding duck hunts at a place called Mallard Manor. And I didn't even know I was getting paid until they handed me a check after it was all over. I didn't even know. I really didn't. I wanted to do something, and I just jumped. I remember talking to the guy on the phone, and I remember saying that, we need somebody this weekend. Come down. Came down, and then I was like, I got paid? He was like, well, yeah, you get paid. I was just happy to be there.
And so hopefully people will take some of that and just work hard because, you create your own destiny, I guess is a word to say.
Yeah.
Your actions are, and people, there's so many people out there looking for hardworking, honest people. It is, I can think of a ton of jobs out there. Somebody, man, I can't find nobody to work no more. Man, the hard work is, I don't know. I was given that gene, I guess, because I'm not scared to work.
Yeah.
I like to work.
You don't ever know who's watching you either.
Right.
You know.
Mm-mm.
But it's been a fun ride, and I've been very blessed to get to spend time with you guys, and then with Will and Jimmy and all the people that helped get Primos to what it is today. And I'm very thankful to get to still do elk hunt and come over here to Cottonmouth and hunt with you guys and laugh, and it's a blessing.
Can't beat it.
It really is.
It's fun. I enjoy it. Which of that, I guess we're about to start hunting this afternoon, so about that time.
Okay, so I guess me and you are a team this week, huh, Lake?
Team.
And I got Jimbo.
Uh-oh.
You got team. Jordan and Jimmy are team itchy trigger finger.
Team killer deer.
Team.
Hey, look, it's October. You might have the same thing going. We might have the same thing.
You won't have any complaints out of me. You say, hey, can I shoot? Yep. Oh, all right then. That'll be about enough for today. Guys, as always, hope you enjoyed the conversation. If you have any questions ever at all, don't hesitate to send them in, Facebook, Instagram, whatever you need to do. And as always, thank you for listening to the Speak the Language podcast.